Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, P.O. Stewart, the John Kingdom Saga. Today, I am very privileged to host a special event, a launch party for my friend Jason Shannon, brilliant author. His book, Tiger Blues, is out, going out in the universe. Kickstarter going on. There's a brilliant copy, which you can see it on the screen. Joining us, we have another fabulous author, Rob Duder, to help celebrate Jason's launch. And we'll be joined by another guest, hopefully soon. So another friend of Jason's to talk about Tiger Blues. So welcome everybody who's watching or live or who may watch the replay. Today it's all about Jason. But first, I'm going to let Rob introduce himself just to say hi and just tell us a bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Really appreciative that Jason asked me to do this. I'm an indie author as well. I write in the horror genre primarily. I've been writing, well, since I could hold a pen, but I've been published for about 10 years, traveled a lot to different shows and things like that where Jason and I met, and just really love the indie genre, the indie market that's out there right now. There's so much good, really quality content that I'm discovering, and not only being part of it as a writer, but as a reader as well. So I'm in Owen Sound, Ontario, north of Toronto. Been here a very long time, and yeah, excited to talk Tiger Blues.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob, for coming. And yeah, I'm very excited to speak Tiger Blues as well. So now the guest of honor, the main man himself, Jason, please introduce yourself and maybe say a bit about Tiger Blues.
Yes, so thank you for that introduction. I am Jason Shannon, author of 6, soon to be 7 novels, Tiger Blues being live on Kickstarter right now. The link, you can go to my website for the main link on that. It's the main page. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to UPL for hosting this and to you, Rob, for coming along. I'm just trying to get more eyes on this project, and I'm so grateful that you could offer me this platform and that you can both have taken a look at the book and can offer some insight into the storyline and how things are going with it. So thank you so much for that. Yes, Tiger Blues is my newest book. It is, as I say, on Kickstarter now. It's going to be released, shipped out to all the backers probably in September, and it is my first attempt at steampunk. It's taking 2 real people from history, and I'm kind of heavily fictionalizing them, but staying within certain boundaries, and putting them on their sort of misadventure together in during the Chinese Civil War. And it was a lot of fun to write, and I'm so glad that people are going to soon be able to get their hands on it and dive in.
Well, thank you, Jason, for coming. Thank you for being here. I have to say, another mind-boggling, mind-blowing book from you. After reading Hounds of Harujin, which was one of my surprise top books in the indie sphere for last year. This, I'm sure, again, is gonna make you ready. It was absolutely fantastic. But before I get into some of my comments and questions, I want to allow Rob to give some initial thoughts about what he felt about Tiger Blues.
Yeah, so Jason and I have known each other a little while now, and only in the last 6 months, or when I did his podcast as well, that I am now a big fan, because I read Zimmer Insurgency, really enjoyed it, and I said to Jason yesterday actually that Zimmer Insurgency is great. Like, I really enjoyed it. Tiger Blues is incredible. Like, it's just nonstop. Like, the world, the opening scene in that book in general, the first chapter, maybe even 2 chapters, will stick with me for a long time. Like, it's just the characters, the world, how fast everything comes together. And I found that with Zimmer Insurgency too. I think it's Jason's writing style that really makes you just sink into the world, and you're like part of it. And Tiger Blues is like just a personification of great characters and world building. So
Yeah, high praise, high praise. I totally agree, Rob. I think for me it was I thought I knew a little bit about the historical period in which, well, the core of the historical period is morphed and changed and squished around by Jason, which he does so expertly again in Hounds of Perugian, the first book I read by him. But he takes these characters, these I think for many people, frankly, some obscure historical characters, and he squishes them together. These two characters that never really met in real life, and he puts them in this situation, and it's just mind blowing, right? Like I think it was a combination. It felt like watching, and again you're reading it, like an Indiana Jones adventure, combined with sci-fi and historical fiction. It was just this crazy, amazing mashup. And just these characters that are so flamboyant and just so out there, and like they're a hot mess, but then they're so compelling and interesting. And then then you have this clash of cultures. It's communism. Like it was just fabulous, right? And so and then it's just it wasn't like per se campy, but it was just so fabulously, just crazily awesome, right? You have these zealots, they're trying to get this talisman called the tiger's penis, right? And it's just you have CIA operatives, and it was just this amazing hodgepodge of just great stuff. But also too, just a celebration of these characters who were so dynamic and so eclectic. One's like this drug kingpin, and the other, and like potentially a spy, and then well, both spies, and it was just such an amazing, like I said, just a mashup. And you have these characters who are may have been genderqueer or non-binary or trans. I know, and one thing I have to give Jason, he also does impeccable research. So, but of course, there's only so much information I'm sure that was available about the period. But I think Jason got it all, right. And of course, his documenting of this it's so detailed and just brings this level of authenticity that's just phenomenal. So, but I just found these two characters, Olive and Kawashima, Yoshiko, just like so compelling. It's so well done.
the characters are so different from each other too. Like there's really no one type of character. They're all so different and diverse from each other, and they all have this like different relationship and communication between different characters. Like and you touched on it too, PL, but like the humor is so like dark and kind of sardonic, but like I mean, Olive alone is just an incredible plethora of had me chuckling out loud several times. So
Oh yeah, the belly laughs, man. Just I was just it was just I would stop and I'd just start just howling, man. It was just awesome. And Jason, I guess what made you decide to take these two particular characters and write about them in the way that you did, and with this alternative history. What made you decide to do that?
Well, there's a lot there. I guess we should probably start by kind of laying out who these characters are, because they are, as you mentioned, real people from history. My narrator is Olive Yang, who is not very well known, but they, as you said, may have been trans or genderqueer, or they may have just been, a queer pioneer of some sort. But they kind of pioneered like opium trafficking in Burma's Golden Triangle, and the thing with both of these characters, I'll get to Kawashima in a second, but the thing with both of them that really drew me into this is that when you read their actual histories, they're both very like down to earth, human. They have their flaws, they have their trials and tribulations, but they also have legends that have built up around them that make them seem, over the top and like James Bondian in their own way. And there's sort of a dynamic between the real person versus their image, which played out in their actual lives, especially with Yoshiko, my secondary character, as to how that actually led to their the end of their life and how their fictionalized persona played into that. So I thought there was a there where I could play into the over the topness of their legend while also being true to their actual history. But yeah, to get back on track, Yoshiko is my second main character, Kawashima Yoshiko, who was a princess of China's last dynasty and got tied in with the Japanese to do some spying for them. Again, some very over the top stuff. They're kind of alleged to have been like honeypotting with, Chinese military officials to feed information back to the Japanese. While at the same time, both of these characters are, cross-dressing as men and dating the hottest actresses out there and, going to the cabarets and the clubs and the newspapers and popular culture at the time are just reporting on them with wild and salacious stories that have some maybe kernel of truth, but are also way played up to the extreme. And so both of them, regardless of how true the sort of legends are about them, they still live these larger than life personas that I'm sure play a much larger role in the regions where they're from, but are not as well known in the West here where we are today. So that's where the characters kind of come from. And then where did I want to play with this? Well, this is my first time where I'm actually writing from the point of view of a real historical person, which I have always shied away from before. I've always been interested in history, and I've always just kind of read history for fun and delving into new for me areas of history, things I was unaware of. It's always just a passion of mine. But I never felt that I could convey the real historical people onto the page with justice. But somewhere along the line, because of the dynamic I just mentioned between their larger than life persona versus their real person, I think that there was an opening there for me to play into this. And the fact that I'm dialing it into like a steampunk alt history, there's like laser swords going on. There's, I kind of exaggerate the height of some of the mountains in Tibet, and maybe there's some mythical animals that show up, and there's, pirates flying around in dirigibles. Like I'm kind of doing the Guy Gavriel K, where he's recounting history very accurately, but then he's turning it just enough so you're not dealing with real history. And that was kind of a dynamic I was playing with there as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it really worked. It certainly worked for me. Rob, regarding what Jason said, how did that work for you with these particular characters of the setting and what Jason did with these real historical characters?
Well, I think what's interesting from my perspective is I knew nothing about those characters, and it mattered this much because Jason creates them as characters from the opening scene. Like right away you're dropped into their emotions, who they are, their anti-hero, status, like the world itself. There's a scene, I think it's early on, it's definitely early on, but where all of it's going into like an inn built into the side of the mountain kind of thing. And just the description as they're walking into that inn, or that, I think it's an inn. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but just the description of walking in there, you're like drawn right into what they're seeing. And there's a description where at one point it says there's a large bearskin rug in front of the fireplace or something, bright blue as it should be. I'm misquoting, of course, but like just those details of like that's normal. That's part of their world, and it just draws you in so much. And there is even terminology. I remember reading Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. And that was a struggle to get through for me because there was a lot of dialogue in there that I didn't understand, it didn't translate particularly well. And in Jason's case, in the case of Tiger Blues, like I said, it mattered zero because I was so drawn in, and everything was so well played out as far as the characters and the world they were in.
Yeah, that's some excellent feedback. I totally concur with that. And I just want to quickly welcome Tia. Thank you for joining us and for supporting Jason. Can you hear us okay? I'm not sure if Tia can hear us. Tia, you there? I think she might be having some problems with her
Might be
volume.
some
Yeah. However, while Tia sorts herself out, I just want to pick up on that thread that Rob pulled about the setting, and and with this setting, you have this this phantasmical crazy mission that Olive gets this crew of rogues essentially, right? One of them's her brother-in-law and Rogers' pilot, and they they take on all comers, all forces, and but their bond as well too was something that I felt was really phenomenal. So Rob mentioned characterizations. So it wasn't just all about Olive and Yoshiko. It was about the bond between the crew that Olive built. I think that really for me was just sucked me right in, right? Like this, and just their messiness and their relationship troubles, with and just the characters themselves, and the way they approach the mission. Let's see if we can get Tia back here. Hey Tia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Fantastic. Thanks.
So sorry.
Wait. Oh, no problem. No, thanks so much for coming. Thanks for joining us and supporting Jason. I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Tia. I've been a friend of Jason's since grade school. So he's been a great support. I've known him when he started writing in high school with like little short stories and things, and watched his writing grow over years, and read many of his things, and even for a character or two. So it's kind of cool. And yeah, my background is just I'm a trans woman who works in support with other trans and LTGB plus people. And one of the reasons I'm a little late is because yesterday we had our Pride celebrations in Belleville and doing quite a bit for that. And I didn't get to sleep till like 2:33 in the morning, and I didn't wake up today until like 2 in the afternoon. I was so beat. So I'm here. I'm so sorry. It took me a little longer to get here, but I'm here.
No, thank you so much for coming, and congratulations on Pride and fantastic work that you're doing. Thank you for all you do in the community. So we're just quickly talking about general impressions about Tiger Blues. So we'd love to hear from you if you have some initial comments or thoughts about the book.
I think I say this a lot when I'm describing Jason's work to people, and he's a very unique writer. Really interesting with what's going on, and he's painting a picture in a way that, because I have a pet peeve, and I've told him this my entire life. When I read, I hate when authors go on and on and on. I read pages and now I know how, like, what material is and all that. And it's like, I get it. Some people want to write every word in the dictionary and make that book as long as possible. I just want to. I have a background in television and broadcasting, and we're like a get to the point kind of people, right? So I find when I have to read a book, I miss a plot detail or two because I'm skimming too much to just try and get to story. But anyways, long story short, I'm rambling. Jason's work isn't like that, and I find when I read it, he keeps me engaged. So I'm a very picky reader. So anybody who's picky at reading, unique way of keeping you invested in what's going on. And Tiger Blues is definitely like that as well. Like definitely got some great like intrigue and some storyline that pulls you through, and yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic, Tia. I just I wanted to see if I get your perspective on, because, and I totally understand what kind of reader you are. I know for me as well, though, I found that Jason's so good at organically building in that world building. So he may not give you 10 pages of exposition about the side of the mountain, but it's so vivid that the way he incorporates it with dialogue and with the reactions to the characters, like you get this real sense of seeing, even though he doesn't go on for pages and pages. Did you find that in the book?
I did. It builds up in a way. I equate like where in Star Wars or other franchises like that. Not that it's specifically like that, but you learn about pieces of the technology. You learn about what's going on in the world. Once we didn't know what like the Force and everything could do with it until like 20 years after the first three. I like the fact that you take a slowly build, and by the end of a story or by the end of a series, you learn pieces and it can fill in that story, right? You don't have to explain the entire story. You live there in page one. I want to be watching it watching it in my mind. I want to see that build up and then questions I have as I go get answered without someone just coming up and being like, and here's the answer for a lot.
Mm-hmm.
From the fact that like, oh, well, and that I bet you that's what that was back. Anyways, slowly in like pieces enough at a time to understand what's going on. But there's a big picture you get to see as it goes, and that's great for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and those are some amazing insights, Tia. Thank you for that. And I want to pull on that thread a bit because I think I mentioned it, and I got the sense from Rob as well with his comments that the first thing I think one of my first comments was about Indiana Jones and about I mentioned watching it, but then I flipped it, reading it, because it was so cinematic. I felt like the book, the action, the dog, everything was so cinematic. I could see this, like, if this was like, this would be a perfect, make this into a movie, right? Because of how dynamic and compelling the action and the dialogue, and like I said, the messiness of the characters and all the things that they're going through, and the humor too, right? I think really would have played out.
Yeah.
Rob, I just want to hear from you. Did you feel that as well with how cinematic the book was?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I'm a cinephile, a movie buff at heart, and even the opening scene to me in the bar had and Tia mentioned this too as a reference point, but had a Star Wars vibe to it for me. And I mean that in the highest of praise, because like the cantina scene in Star Wars and this scene in Tiger Blues are iconic. Like that opening scene in Tiger Blues for me will sit with me for a long time, as I said. But yeah, the cinematic aspect, and yet there's something impossible about the idea of it being a movie, in that this really works as a novel. Like it really, really draws you in and keeps you reading. And the characters need that time to expand or, and evolve. And I think it does that so well. I mean, I'd watch the hell out of a movie of it, but I'm sure the book would be better.
No, I have to agree. And Jason, was there some intentionality there to write the book in a way that would be so cinematic. It's punchy. Every line grabs you. Again, it's so easy to visualize what's going on. Is there some intentionality there? Like, I've read Hounds of Origin, Volume 1. I'm going to be starting Volume 2 soon. Volume was just fantastic. Of course, that was Origin is a big book, right? And you have multiple volumes, multiple installments. It's very immersive. It's very deep. You have hundreds of characters. And it was still cinematic, but of course, I think there's a lot more world building, a lot more lore, and a lot more involved in especially the backdrop of Origin. Not that it was short on that in Tiger Blues. However, of course, because of the scope and the size, a bit different. So, but was this intentional? The cinematic element of Tiger Blues, the way you want, was that what you were hoping for when you wrote it?
Yes, and thank you for that question. And just to touch on what all of you mentioned earlier about the humor in it, I'm so glad that came through. Like, I always strive to have maybe not like laugh out loud like Adam Sandler, but just have enough humor in some of the turns of phrases or the dialogue or the back and forth that it keeps you interested, even if there's not laser battles going on. So that's kind of my intentionality with the humor there. And I was trying to dial it up a little bit more in this one because I think it fit more with the characters as I envision them.
Mm-hmm.
But to your question specifically about, yes, I guess in a way I'm always envisioning it as kind of a movie in my head as well. And so I'm trying to write it from that point of view. I don't like a lot of exposition in my writing for that same reason that I think the plot should always be moving forward in some way. And if you're spending 2, 3, 4 pages where you're just kind of turning to the camera and explaining something, it drains the story, the momentum for me. So I always try to avoid that. And I wanted to kind of just jump straight into it here. The scene that Rob keeps mentioning at the beginning of the book, the first 2 chapters, is where these 2 characters meet each other and they get paired up, and Olive is on this mission, which we should get to actually talking about the mission in a little bit. But because of the sort of conflict in the first chapter, now they're down a member of their crew, and this is where Yoshiko just happens to walk into their life and is like, oh, this is congratulations, you've got a job now if you want it. I wanted to kind of get to that and have that introduction right off the bat, because one of the issues I'm dealing with is that it's all narrated from Olive's point of view, but I want Yoshiko to be as much of a central character as Olive. So I have to get Yoshiko into this like pretty much from the get-go. So like chapter 2, they are right there and they're in it from till the end. And so yeah, everything kind of just clicked. Like Jean is Olive's girlfriend. That is kind of the central figure in the first chapter, and that's right out of real history. And the conflict, which I guess we can kind of spoil it, because I should mention the first 2 chapters are recorded and they're available on my podcast for anyone to check out. But yeah, the book opens with a breakup, and Jean is leaving Olive for Olive's brother, which is the now lost member of the crew. So that whole conflict, which of course I'm twisting a little bit to make it more cinematic, that all happened in real life. And everything just kind of worked out timing wise, that this is where the novel ultimately comes from, is that I could have Yoshiko walk into this for their own reasons at this point in time in 1948, at roughly the same time that this breakup is happening. Olive is married to a husband. They marriage of convenience, marriage of arrangement, and all of these details are kind of swirling around right at this same time. So I'm like, this is the perfect place to open it. And what Rob was mentioning about sort of the cantina scene, like, yeah, I kind of, that image just appeared in my mind of like, yeah, this is like the bar full of rogues and cutthroats, and it's not uncommon for the bartender to just pull out a shotgun and threaten people back in line. And that's what I really wanted to go with there. And it also seems like the perfect place that Olive would hang out. So though that opening scene and the dynamic there all just kind of fell into place. And as I wrote more on it, it all fleshed itself out a little bit more.
Yeah, and I loved all those elements and aspects of the book, and you know, all of course, all the characters stuck out for me. All of course, you know, I think one thing that really permeated for me was with Olive was that she was this fabulous leader, right? They were this fabulous leader, like with all of the issues that they were experiencing. You know, they were really good at what they did, right? And I think, but also too for me, and again, I said I pride myself as a student of history and somewhat, and of course, I'm not saying that I'm some some historical scholar, but when I think about especially trans people of past eras, right? Like today, we don't have to, if you said, Patricia Emanuel or Candace Kane or Chaz Bono or Isis King, people know who you're talking about. And if you go back and you look at trans people from previous decades and centuries, for me, my biggest surprise was that I wasn't aware of these two particular historical figures that were potentially trans. And so I guess, and I know I consider you're very modest, Jason, but I consider you somewhat of a scholar. Certainly your endeavors, your research are so impeccable. It's very scholarly. What I want to know is how did you happen upon these two particular characters? And I'd love to hear what Rob and Tia feel about what their knowledge was. I know Rob said he didn't know much about them at all. I'm not sure if Tia did, but with these characters that are so dynamic and are like so colorful and like I felt ashamed that how have I never heard about these two historical characters and what that means for looking back with the lens of how we view characters like this in history who were trans. Rob, do you have any feedback or comments about that?
Well, I think kind of along the lines of what I said before too, but like it really didn't matter because the world was so well established and the characters, I think the liberties that Jason took with those characters, and again, I don't know much about them historically, but giving them personality, giving them like certain traits, personality traits that made them very real characters. And not only those two, but like the other characters around them too. I think they're they're also established by the relationships they have with other people. Like I'm a big fan of Roger. I think he was a great character, and there's just a lot of instances where some of it, well, we know, as Jason had said, some of it is historically accurate, but it blends so well with the fiction. I think that I don't know one from the other because I know nothing about it. I'm okay with that. Not that I wouldn't like to know more, but
No, that's fantastic. No, that's fantastic, Rob. Tia, any comments there?
Yeah, like even as a trans person myself, I wasn't aware of these stories until Jason approaching his books and things, and we were talking about things on his podcast and watching some videos and things, and I really learned a lot. But it's amazing. There are these stories throughout history. As much as some people may want you to think it, trans people are not new. We have been in existence since like ancient Egypt. There have been people who, in today's lens, you would describe as trans, and all sorts of people LGBTQ, and in a lot of places in history, we were celebrated sometimes as healers, people who like reverenced for the fact that we experience both sides. Self was 36 before I became Tia, so I experienced life for 36 years as a man. So now I have a young son who's 15, a couple sons actually, but they still have someone who's experienced life as a man to give advice to, even though I am now going through and experience life as a woman. And in ancient times, and in other parts of the world and things, that would have been a very important community person. It was a very mediating person, right? So we've existed forever. I'm going to, but there's a lot of history to pull from if you look into it. And a lot of it, if you look at the right time frame of where it was written, you can see where history starts turning and changing the story when Christianity and things like that start moving across. And that's how, in today's day and age, we have a lot of these like, well, this is the story. Like, but if you look at how that story was written before Christians moved in and before came in, that's not how it was portrayed. It was changed, right? So a lot of these pre-existing sort of ideas and why characters like in the real world, like for Jason, were ambiguous at the time was because history was at a point where we were being erased. We were trying, like, you couldn't just be who you were because there were so many barriers, right? And the world loves barriers. Barriers make people feel safe, right? And that, you know, like these characters, honestly, from being ambiguous in actual history, because one, the people writing the history wouldn't have had the terms that we use today. They wouldn't have known how to describe it. The people themselves would not necessarily have been as forthcoming, telling them, like, these would have been very deep, dark, private secrets that, like, maybe even lovers didn't know, right? So all this time later, for us to look back and to put these labels on these characters is one way of looking at it, but it's not necessarily the truth. But I like how Jason has a bit of an ambiguous and shine the light in one direction, you know, like that's what fiction is too, right? Like we can write necessarily the truth to give people, like, even like myself, a story to, you know, that's, even if the history doesn't necessarily say one way or the other definitively, right? Like some of the best have, you know, dinosaurs in a park. That's not realistic or scientific, but we love it, right? And it's not accurate to history, but we can take that, right? So I see stories like this. There isn't a lot of it for us. I like to read a story. Not that I'm the main character, or not that people like myself are acknowledged. You know, they almost aren't acknowledged because they're just people. I love those kinds of stories. They're just like, you know, it's like when you watch a show and there's a gay character and they're not a gay, just gay, and they're a great character. I want to see more of that. Trans people who are just trans people, they're not the trans person, just that. That's my friend person. I want to see that in fiction. I want to see that in books. I want to movies. Not because I want everyone else to feel the wrath of trans people, but it's normal. It's like, let's make it normal, just like everything else. And I like how in Jason's book, doing the struggling that we've had to do in the past and sometimes still have to do, so that people realize that I got asked a lot about Pride Month, right? I don't want to start any drama, but people said, like, why do you need a whole month? Why do you need a whole month? And I said, well, when we're not fighting for these rights and we're not fighting anymore, I'll tell you what, I don't even need a day. Make me equal and normal, and I don't need anything. Don't even celebrate me. I'm just normal. You keep taking away my rights. You want to make it so I can't go to the bathroom in public and stuff, and like in a bathroom. I don't mean like on a tree. I mean like in the bathroom. You know, I want to take all these away from me. I'm going to fight, and I'm going to remind you that we're here, we're queer, get used to it, because we've been saying it since the 70s, and some people don't get it yet. You know, some fights never end, and I'm sure, you know, and mine's not even there's lots of fights. And the nice thing about being part of a fight like this is that we join with everybody who's being oppressed, right? Oppression is oppression, no matter who it is, what color, what race, background, everything, religion. If you're being oppressed, you're being oppressed, and we need to stop that kind of stuff. And it only comes from us showing people that it's regular to be here. So do we need a month? No, I don't think we need a month. We need a month right now. We need a month while we're fighting for, you know, rights in the UK and in the States and all the other places. In 10, 5 years, whatever it takes for us to feel like normal, if that's what it takes, I'd be happy if we have a day that's like, it's National Pirate Speak Day, and people are like, I don't do that. Like, I'd be fine with that. You know, I don't need a month. But right now, as long as people are being oppressed, and this is what they give us time to do, I'm going to use it. And I'm sorry, I kind of took over there. I'm a little activisty from time to time.
No, please don't apologize at all. I was just eating it all up and just fascinated with what you were saying. So and just agreeing with so many of your points. And I think, and I always say this about literature, especially when it comes to topics like that, like violence against the LGBTQ plus community, against people of different races, against religious tolerance. I always say that what I love about literature and what I feel we need is, I so agree with you, Tia. We need, what I loved about Tiger Blues, one of the things is that, yes, it is, you can understand the struggle, and the struggle is not hidden, but yet there is this normalization of, yes, that's just this person who happens to love this person or who happens to want to dress this way. But we also, I totally agree. I think we need more of that. And I also think, though, too, it's specifically because of what you said, we do need those books that highlight the fact that there is oppression and that there is, bigotry, and that there is, violence against women, people of different genders, non-binary, people of different races. We still need those books that shine a light on unfortunately, because it keeps being perpetuated, right? And we often address it. But yes, what I love about Tiger Blues, and I totally agree with what you're saying. What I love the Tiger Blues was, yes, it's almost like a breath of fresh air where, yes, the struggle is acknowledged and seen, but yes, there is that sense of like everybody just is there and loves everybody, and that's my friend, and it's not, the relationships discussed as relationships, not the fact that it's a woman loving a woman, or you know what I mean. It's just that sense of normalcy, and I do love that. But yeah, I think I felt, Jason's books always educate me, and like I said, I don't think he gets enough credit as being essentially a scholar in terms of his historical research and the things he uncovered, and to uncover these two incredible characters from history, right? Like I knew about the Asher Biddapals, who was supposed to have like dressed and behaved and socialized as a woman, the ancient Assyrian king. I knew about Eleanor Ridden and the in London. Like I have in my head my own collection, of course, with my limited knowledge of people who may or may not have been trans. But these two characters were nowhere near on my list, right? And I thought I knew something about the period, like the Chinese the war that Jason addressed. But it was just so amazing to learn about these two characters, that they were part of the landscape. And as you said, Tia, trans people are everywhere, right, through our history, for as long as there's been people, right? But it's so nice to see more and more of them highlighted in that context. So that's one of the things that I love about reading Jason's work specifically, is that I always learn something, right? So now, Jason, was there specifically, when you took these two characters and you decided, because these two characters never met, they never actually met in real life. Was it hard to mesh there, even though, despite there's some of the similarities, was it hard to mesh them together in this story?
It was, so I approached it thinking it was going to be quite difficult, and I should actually, I just want to pause for 1 second to say that anyone who wants to know about these two characters, Tia and I have done deep dives on them, which is on my podcast. The Olive Yang episode is out now, and the Yoshiko episode will be coming, I think, tomorrow. So anyone can go to my podcast on Spotify and check that out just under my name, and that will be there. And it's basically taking my historical note and just kind of fleshing out a little bit more so that the book is not just half historical note. And also to mention on what Tia was talking about there, about how this was not sort of like the story about the trans character. This is just the character who happens to be trans, who is there doing their own thing. That was very much the dynamic I was trying to go for, because I am not trans myself, and I am an ally, but there's only so much I want to kind of take on the effort of, or take on the burden of saying, this is a story I want to tell, because it's it's not my story to tell. So I'm going to tell the story about just interesting characters on a quest to get a mystical amulet, not so much about the daily struggles or the oppression that they would have had to have dealt with in their own time. That I am somewhat knowledgeable on, but there's only so much lived experience I have in that regard. But getting back to your original question, I guess I should start with saying, how did the idea of this book come about? Which is, I've known about Kawashima Yoshiko for many years now. It's whenever you kind of learn anything about the Pacific War in general, specifically about Manchuria and the end of the Chinese dynasty and all that stuff, Yoshiko just always crops up. And I kind of mentioned this in the podcast that Tia and I did, where they're never usually the central character. They always just kind of swoop in as this, beautiful, alluring, woman in heavy quotations in, dressed in men's clothes, sleeping with everyone. They're, very promiscuous and bisexual. And then they steal the show and then they quickly exit again through stage right. And that's probably how I learned about them in the first place. That makes for an interesting story, but they seldomly ever get their own story told, which probably planted the idea in my head about this, over the top James Bondian spy character who dresses as a man and is, literally referred to as the beauty in men's clothing and Eastern Jewel and all these over the top names. And somewhere along the line, I don't remember where, I learned about Olive Yang, probably through some similar mechanism where, again, they kind of crop up as side characters in other people's stories, and there's a similar dynamic at play there. Now, the idea of actually pairing them together kind of came to me as all great writing ideas do, where, you have like a spark that goes off, like, what if I did this? Maybe I was half asleep at the time. And then I said, that initially I was like, oh, that's a stupid idea. That'll never work. There's no way I can pull that off. And then I sat off for like a day or so, and I'm like, actually, wait a minute, hold on. And I started doing some research. And I'm like, this actually might work, because what's the conflict happening at the time? Well, it's the Chinese Civil War. World War II just ended. There was, parenthetically, I'll add that there was another book I was working on, which I still hope to have come out at some point, which takes place during World War II, and Olive Yang crops up in that one, not as the central character, but kind of as like a little cameo appearance. Just because, again, time and place worked out, and I'm like, this would be a really interesting person to throw in here. And so I was kind of working on that same dynamic. This will be like a crossover. But specifically, like, was it difficult to get them to have their stories intermesh? Not really, because, mild spoiler alert, but Yoshiko was dead in 1948. They were executed as a traitor, and this takes place after their execution. Of course, in real history, there were rumors and conspiracy theories that they faked their execution, or that powerful forces swapped the body out, or something of that nature. So now I can easily write them into this. And there's only one person's history I have to really worry about aligning properly, and that's Olive's, because anything that Yoshiko doesn't need to go back to Japan in 1955 to show up for this or that event, because they weren't there. It's just Olive's history I need to worry about. And as the series goes on, and I do want to write more in this series, kind of a loosely connected world, there will be other events that, involving maybe the KMT in Burma, various CIA schemes going on. There's other, international schemes going on that I can piece around. I can insert Olive in there because they were in prison at times, they were out of the country at times, and I need to worry about stuff like that. But there's still a wide open canvas as things I can do here. But then on Yoshiko's side, it's completely open. There's no hindrance for me just placing them wherever I want at whatever time. And so it was not as difficult as you might think it might have been. And I was just lucky enough I had some resources to help me out there.
Well, I can say this, it appeared to be seamless, because after, of course, once I read the book, I went back and tried to do my own research, specifically about the time period, about these two characters. And again, it just made me even that more impressed, with what you were doing, Jason. I think we just lost him momentarily. Hope she'll be back. But so Rob, did you? The one thing I want to talk about, and Jason touched a bit about, was the mission itself. the mission for this tiger penis, right? Because I thought it was just awesome. So, Rob, what did you feel, or how did you feel about the main plot thread of the story, which was the mission to get the tiger penis? What was that part of the story like for you?
Yeah, it's like from the moment it's first talked about, when they're like a tiger penis, we're going after something called tiger penis, and like, again with the humor, right? Like, that's very funny, but for them it's real. Like, this is something that is, this mythical thing that they want to go after, right? So, yeah, I thought the way that the group was brought together was really well done, and then um, the journey that they go on in order to accomplish it is just really, like, to use the word again, diverse. And I know I used that when I mentioned the characters too, but also the journey is very different. Like, there's always something different happening in different situations that they get themselves into. And yeah, I thought it was really, really well done. It to me, and this was mentioned as well before by someone, but like, this is the most unique book I've ever read. Like, I'm pretty vanilla when it comes to my reading. So I mean, this was like out there, and I was just so drawn to it. And the fact, and when you were talking about the non-binary characters, and the gender fluidity and that sort of thing, like, I really, really liked that it was just normal in their world. Like, and I know you all touched on it as well, but it was just the same thing with this quest that they're on. It's real to them.
Yeah, and it felt like, and again, I only had very cursory knowledge about, when I saw Tiger Penis being mentioned. Okay, well, no, just okay. It's this talisman that can cure erectile dysfunction. That was the limited extent of my knowledge of what I thought it was, right? And of course, Jason adds his own spin to it, but I just loved, like, it felt like, and I keep going back to movies and Indiana Jones, and pick your myth, your mythos, whether it's the Holy Grail, or it just, the Ark of the Covenant. It just felt like this real thing that was really important to get, and that was going to be so meaningful. So I want to hear from Tia. What did you think about the quest for the tiger penis? How was that element of the story for you? Not sure. Is Tia frozen? I can't tell.
Yeah, it looks like the camera might be frozen there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll wait to hear from Tia. When she comes back, we'll get her impressions. But so Jason, was that something that I mean, that obviously it's the central focus, in some ways, of the story. What made you decide to use that as the building the story around?
Again, it was probably like a swirling of different elements that all came together. I know, for example, on the cover, my webcam is not the best, but the monastery you see on the cover here is a real monastery. It's in Bhutan. It's called the Tiger's Nest, and it is, according to legend, was founded by this great Tibetan guru who rode a tiger up there, and it's now built into the cliffside, and it's 10,000 feet above sea level, which I would love to see someday, but I have to build up my leg strength a little bit to walk up there. And apparently, and I have not yet had the pleasure of going to Bhutan, but apparently if you walk through the central cities, there's penis engravings everywhere as a fertility symbol. And so, like, these elements kind of swirl together, and I was like, hey, yeah, this mystical tiger, and there's penises everywhere. And you see these like little listicles online every now and then, like, this mythical country where there's penises everywhere. And I'm like, I can play with that a little bit. And of course it plays into the gender dynamics a little bit as well. and it adds to the humor a little bit. Things are a little bit tongue in cheek. It's
Yeah.
I don't want it to be this very dour. I mean, they are dealing with one of the most destructive events in human history, the Chinese
Yes.
Civil War, and the Chinese Communist Great Leap Forward that follows from that. But I wanted it to have a little bit of an overlay of humor and lightheartedness to kind of go with the spirit of these characters. You guys hearing that? There's a little bit of interference going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it's either your mic. Let me just make sure it's not mine. No, it seems to have stopped. It's back.
Yeah, no, it's mine. I muted myself for 1 second.
That's no problem.
Maybe if I've been having some issues with my mic. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. Oh, that's gone.
Okay.
Yep. You're good. You're good.
All right.
You're good.
It was just a swirling of different elements that all came together, and I don't know, this novel, I'm sure you two have had this issue as well, where the idea for a novel doesn't come from one single spark moment. It's maybe you have that spark, but there are dozens of other little ideas that maybe are just in the back of your mind and you've made notes on, that you're like, oh, I can incorporate this and I can incorporate this, and what if I do this as well? And that is very much the story of how this novel came to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you brought all these elements together. It was just fantastic the way you did that. I also want to touch briefly, about because you mentioned it. The historical context, the Chinese Civil War, communism, all of these aspects that the characters are caught up in, the prejudices and bigotries amongst the characters for people, whether it's for against Japanese people, whether against people who are subscribed to the communist ethos, and it was interesting to see the characters who were it was raw, it was real. They were entrenched in their views, and these views were for a reason. So, Rob, how did you you find that element? I know for me, I think it was really well done. How did you find that element of the book? Did you see the same kind of realism that I saw with that aspect?
Yeah, I think and we haven't touched on it much really, is the politics behind this. And I found, similar with Jason's other work with the Zimmer insurgency, there's a political thriller aspect to this whole thing that is just really, really well done. And again, not knowing much about, I'm a history guy too, but I don't know anything about this particular history. But not knowing anything about it, it almost makes you a bigger part of the world, because you are experiencing everything through their eyes, and that includes the politics. And looking around the room and saying, that person belongs to that group and that person belongs to that group, kind of thing. Like, you learn very quickly what their world is like, their atmosphere, their political atmosphere, right?
And I feel like, I mean, rather than what I love about books like Jason's is that they take the people. It's not, you can read a historical textbook and okay, well, you understand who the KMT is, you understand who the CCP is, but now you get to meet some of the people who were living it and who were intimately involved in the conflict, and why the Chinese Communist Party and the Republic of China, what were the issues that were really underlying in this conflict, and how, and I think it was fascinating seeing, because from a 21st century perspective, from so my kids and my grandkids, China's always been communist, and it's part of, that's our lived reality today. But to go back and see how that took place, I thought was fascinating. So Jason, and again, I have to give you credit for your amazing research into the period. Did you go in knowing a lot about the period already, and then obviously expand and continue with your research there to bring the story to life? Or was it something that you find yourself having to do a lot of research on to get what you to paint the picture you wanted for the story?
For the I probably knew I had like a Wikipedia overview sketch on a lot of this stuff. And as I mentioned, I was aware of both Olive Yang and Kawashima Yoshiko, but most of what I knew was probably coming from their sort of larger than life alter egos. And there's a couple of books that I did do a lot of research on this. There are some good books out there. In Yoshiko's case in particular, I found it very striking how books written where they appear as a side character that are still very well, attested and everything, they come off as this really over-the-top flamboyant character, whereas their own biography by an academic from 2015 is much more muted and much more sober, and they come off more like a real person. I hate to say like a real person, but as a more down-to-earth person struggling with finances and struggling with health issues and what have you. And their over-the-top aspects are not even commented on in that. So I had to do a lot of research on this and a lot of learning, which is always fun for me to do. I do have a rather extensive historical note at the back of the book, which I didn't intend on being that long, but there is one little tidbit I came across in my research that is quite contentious that I thought I want to include this. I want to reference this in the book and maybe in future installments as well. But I need to be able to say, I am not inventing history. I'm not, someone who speaks Japanese, who's read the original files or anything like that. I have to rely upon, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. So that's why everything in my footnote, everything in my endnote is footnoted to explain exactly where that comes from. And that's where, if I'm going to go into such specificity, I'm talking about Yoshiko's alleged connections to the Black Dragon Society in Japan. And if I have to go into such specificity on that, I might as well just go into specificity on everything.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea about the KMT in Burma, for example, that whole conflict and this foreign army coming in and how the mechanism of transporting opium across vast distances was, or how the CIA got involved in this and how they, were facilitating illegal gun shipments and all this stuff. This is not stuff I really want to reference just casually. I want the reader to have a good understanding as to what's going on, because, and I had this issue in the Hounds of Origin as well. If you just go to Wikipedia on this, which most readers are going to do, they're not going to get the full picture. And Wikipedia might even say things that are in contrast to the actual history. So I might be saying, what PhD historians are saying, Wikipedia just cites a pop culture article. So that's why I have such a historical, vast historical note at the end.
Again, I'm always amazed and again impressed, blown away by the level of research that you do and your efforts towards authenticity and educating all of us on this. So kudos to you on that. So Tia, do you have any comments about the whole political aspect and some of the themes that Jason explores in terms of how essentially Chinese communism came into being, which is something that for a lot of readers in the 21st century, China was almost always communist, right? That's the context from which they're living. So but now through works like Jason's, you're seeing kind of that evolution. Do you have any comments about that aspect of the novel?
It definitely paints a picture of a world I'm glad I don't have to live through personally. Really a rough time in history in general, or everywhere for people like myself, but just a rough transition to go through and to be in the time periods where the two is about to start, and then like the transitioning from like you said, like to communism over traditional Japanese like styles of government, and to be someone who's already considered an outcast or different in a world where everything is changing, right? That can be even more scary. So I definitely find myself when I read this to be, it's a great story and I love the adventure and things, but it's like it's one of those worlds where you're like, if I had a wish to go to my favorite IP, this would not be the one I'd want to be in, right? Like I'm love observing it. It's a good story from the outside perspective. It's not a point in history I'd want to go visit myself, I think, for sure.
Oh, those are really, really awesome comments.
Political stuff comes with, pardon me, the now happening because of transitions from one set of values to other sorts of values, or what the goal of a country is can really determine what your place in that kind of is, right? And unfortunately for people like myself and for all of us who aren't part of the 1% who make decisions, we have to go with flows that we don't create. If the stream starts flowing backwards, we don't get to control that, and we have to do our best to either swim against it or let it pull us back or whatever, right? So stories like this are great because they can be looked at from our perspective, and we can see similarities in things that happen now, in things that happened in the past, and hopefully use that. Let's not let history repeat itself. Let's learn from it. Even in a story like this, where it's it's a fictionalized version of these things, the point of it still matters, right? Like so many good fiction stories tell great morals and kind of like they tell better stories sometimes than real history can, because real history, we live in a world where the things don't happen like in a movie. Things don't go the way we'd like. Things are messy, things are sticky, people are sticky, messy, and everything we do. So sometimes it's nice to see these fictionalized stories where there is a better, I don't want to say a happy ending, right? Because that's cliche, but like there's a better way, or even just to say like, hey, this stuff could have been happening while all that other stuff was happening. And it's a reflection of, no matter how dark it gets, there's people who will fight, there's people who will stand out, people who will do their own thing. Freedom is almost like something people have to do. It's not something just given to you. Many of us live in free countries, yet if you choose not to be free, you can be enslaved by those same systems and certain conventions. You like myself, once I transitioned and started transitioning, I'm much more free as a person because I'm not even holding myself in those kinds of like constraints of what I thought like conformity and all that, right? So stories like this are important because they inspire people that even in the darkness, it's you and your struggle. And if you want to be free and you want to change, want to make your life better, you need to do things about it. I'm not saying that what they do in this book is necessarily the best choices to emulate one for one, right? But the point of it is that these people were in that situation and they still chose to do something about it versus staying at home and just letting the system steamroll them and just doing what they were told, right? There's so many people, I did it for 36 years. So many people just living that, do what you're supposed to. It's easier. It's easier to just turn your brain off and do what they tell you. It's like eventually we wake up, we take the red pill, and some of us decide that we're done with the Matrix. Break free. But yeah, stories like this inspire people. I'm sorry, I get rambly, but stories like this
No, not at all.
people. Yeah, it's great because it shows people that there's hope. Hope is so important, and if you can give people something to feel like you understand what they're going through, or you give people like, hey, even it's not so bad, even in this story that's fake, where lots of bad things are happening, like not fake, but exaggerated, lots of things are happening. These people are still strong enough in character to stand up and do something about it. And if everybody gets just a little spark from that, and they do something a little better for themselves, or the greater community because of these words or because of other authors, that's awesome. And that's what I love about storytelling. It inspires people. And like a piece like this, who knows? In 100 years, someone could be coming back and talking about how books like this were the beginning of a change in our society. And thanks to people like Jason Shannon and their contributions to these kinds of stories, it normalized it, right? So anything like this that can talk about these issues, and not just issues about me, like I'm talking about all the issues that are talked about in the book, and all the struggles and all the challenges. You talk about those and make them in a way that's interesting. It can bring inspiration, right? It's not a real story, but how many people grew up being like, I want to be like Indiana Jones? How many kids had the toy whip or somebody's swing rope and they used it and just because it was so like inspiring, I know I love a good Batman story, it's just somebody who, we take a spin on these like dark stories and we give somebody a hero, even if it's not realistic. Those stories give us that kind of extra push, right? Or that, like, I don't think I could be Batman. I'm not delusional, but I know I could stand up and help people who need it. And that's what I try to do in my support, in my activism, in my pride celebrating, is supporting other people, because I might not be Batman and I might not have millions of dollars in gadgets and whatever. I might not be Superman, but I can be the best Tia I can be to other people. And stories like this are what are planting the seeds for people to feel that way and become more like that. If we can have a world more just people standing up for themselves, feeling good, and getting to that point where now it's time to spread it. My gosh, would this planet be so full of love, so full of peace? But stories like this are how you start that conversation, how you change. It takes time, but how you can change over time that general consensus, and it normalizes us. So I think that's why I like Jason's writing, and I like this book specifically because there's so much of it that does that.
That's so well said, Tia. So well said. Just again, just absorbing everything you're saying and agreeing. And I think when you were speaking, Tia, the word that comes to mind for me when it comes to Jason's writing is intrepid, courageous. He's someone who writes with this unflinching sense of truth and realism and I think Rob will probably agree that I think. And part of it too is that hey, and for authors like myself and Rob and Jason T, I'm not sure if you're an author as well, but I'm not sure, but
nope, more just on the TV side.
Oh well, there you go. Well, let's say creatives then for the four of us that especially for those of us who are more in the indie sphere. I think that's some of the beauty of being indie is that truth and that realism and that grit and that courage to tell certain stories. And again, that's one of the reasons I really admire Jason as a person, of course, as an author and his work. And that's one of the reasons why I really, as Tia was highlighting, as Rob has highlighted as well, why we really admire Jason and Tiger Blues specifically. So it's just a phenomenal book in that regard. So, but listen, I want to respect everybody's time, but I do want to allow, as we're winding down, just to hear from Rob and Tia, just some kind of closing remarks or comments about the book, and or about Jason. I know I have a few things to say as well about it, but I'd like to hear from you as the guests. Any final comments or commentary on Tiger Blues and or Jason's writing. So, Rob, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what haven't we said? I hope by now you're digging, thinking about digging into it, because it's well worth it, and so unique. And the word didn't come up, but I kept thinking it. I was reading it, and that it reminded me of a great pulp noir fiction. Like, I used to buy little pulp mass paperback and devour them, and this is much bigger than that, but it had that same vibe, that world, that like a noir pulp fiction, type story. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. Thank you, Jason, for sharing it with me. And I really look forward to reading more of your stuff. I'm very excited to hear that you have more ideas in this universe. So.
Well, thank you so much. And
and
Tina?
I think, yeah, sorry, I love it. I have been friends with Jason for years, and one of the reasons we've stayed, you lose connection with people over time, but one of the reasons we've always stayed really close is that I had a background in television. Someday I am going to help make one of his stories into something visual, because for as long as he's been writing, I have been telling him, like, okay, if you do this to your story or add this to your story, or you kind of do it this way. So I don't want to take any credit, because Jason is a great writer, and that's nothing to do with me. But I feel like the reason he writes in a cinematic way is because his whole like teenage life with me, with looking at things through like television and how to film something, and if you write that, it'll cost more than if you write it like this. It's kind of given him those little points. So it's like, I feel great when I hear everyone saying like, oh, it's so cinematic. I agree, but I feel like there's just a little hint of me in there, just because I'm always like, make sure it's easier to make sure it's be fun to watch, and he's built something that I cannot wait to find out that they're going to make it into something more. And if I can do anything to make that happen, I really wish I could, because it's a great story. And it can build onto so much more. Like, I see like an IP. I said that a few times. I would love to see this be like one of your cornerstone IPs that you write, and you make spin-offs and all that kind of thing, because there's characters there that make me laugh. There's characters that are, really interesting, and you're kind of like, I need some more information on that person, please. Like, what were they doing before they came into the story 10 minutes before that? Because it seems badass and needs some more, so I think that this is going to be a cool book for people, but I really think that, someday they're going to be announcing that it's coming to theaters, and you should go see that too, because I'm sure it's made for that.
Here. I hear. So supported that, and just heartwarming to hear your friendship and that element or aspect of your friendship in terms of what perhaps you've also helped contribute to Jason's writing. So Jason, all I have to say is that it's been such a pleasure to get to know you. You're so intelligent. You're such a great person. You're so genuine. You're such a phenomenal writer. I'm always amazed when I read your books. First and foremost, I think for me, because I feel I'm one of those knowledge-thirsty kind of people, what you teach me through your books. And I'm going to talk about the historical aspect, because again, I give you so much kudos as a researcher, and as someone who could easily be a prof, teaching some of the stuff at the university level. But I really, I think it's the moral lessons I learned from your books, and I think the things that make, and it's not that you're preachy at all, just the things that you make me think about, because the best books for me in fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction are ones that make me think, right? Not necessarily ones that provide answers, but ones that make me really think about certain things. And your books always do that for me, and they always stimulate a part of my brain that's thirsty to explore certain topics. And there's no higher praise I can give you that your books always resonate with me, and they make me think. And I think that's something that, it's great to read books that are just light entertainment, fluff. You read them and it's great, and you forget about it the next day. And that was, but your books, while again the humor here was fabulous. It was a romp. It was a ride. It felt a bit campy sometimes, but it was just it's the deep emotive parts of your books that I'm connected to, that really like stimulate whatever Synopsis are firing about certain topics. That's why I love. I think that's why I love your writing so much. So kudos to you. I did want to give you, Jason, as well, a chance to really kind of, as we're winding down, talk about the Kickstarter and the launch and stretch goals and anything you want to say about the fact that this wonderful book is going to be out there in the wild and what people can do to support and back it. Maybe you could talk about what may or may not be coming next, if you can give away any secrets about, because I'm dying for a sequel. So I hope that is coming. And Tia got hinted at maybe it could be something foundational you work, but can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, for sure. And just thank you. I want to say thank you again to all three of you for the kind words. I'm so glad that all the things I was trying to put into this, the humor, the sort of campiness, but not quite so campy, the cinematic aspects, the back and forth of the dialogue, the immersiveness of the world that I'm in, the brevity of what I'm describing while also painting such a wide picture. I'm so glad that all came through, and thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for your kind words in extolling the virtues of the book here. As PL mentioned, the Kickstarter is ongoing now. It's going until the 5th of July, and I'm seeking $1,000 to basically just cover the costs of editing and cover art and some of the promotional artwork I've done for the book. There are of course your standard tiers where you can get the ebook, you can get a signed paperback sent to you, and then there's tiers above that where you can get some of my other books signed and sent to you. You can get some of my audiobooks sent to you. My first book, which both Rob and Tia are fans of, is The Zimmer Insurgency, which is also very pride friendly, and that is included as one of the upper tiers where you can get a signed copy of that. It's still my most popular book, so that is a nice one to add on there as well. And then some of the upper.
I want to just add. Sorry, can I cut you off for just 1 second? Because that book is amazing. If you are looking into the Kickstarter and you don't own a copy of that book, get the version that gets that book too. Because if you haven't read The Zimmer Insurgency, that's the first time I read a book of Jason's, and I'm like, I want to make this a movie, but it's gonna be a weird one, a good weird one, but it's gonna be weird. And like that's one of the first ones I read every page and was like, how would I transcribe this scene? How would I do this? So if you haven't read that one, sorry, but you gotta read that one too. You gotta read both. Go read Tiger Blues, but also go read Zimmer Insurgency. Go read it right now if you can. It's awesome.
Yes, and there's the weird scene that you're talking about. We had a conversation about this a while back. I won't spoil it, but there is some really weird stuff in there. And when I was doing the audiobook for that one, I kind of forgotten how weird I had made it. So actually, in the audiobook, I have a little sort of self interview at the end where I talk about like the process of doing it, and I'm also talking about like I forgot this was in there, but I'm glad I still put it in there. So yes, that's all available in some of the upper tiers. The uppermost tiers, I have three. So my anthology book, The Moon Panther, which features novellas, I was basically releasing them as I was writing them. So 3 of them have these sort of little mini trade paperback style with free online art, and they have been depublished online, but I still have like 10 or 15 copies left, which you can still get, full of typos and signatures. And I'm happy to send those out if anyone wants to back on that upper tier. And then, of course, my uppermost tier is you can have a character named after you in book 2. This is something I really hope someone takes me up on this offer. It would not just be like a one-off character, like, oh, the waiter is named, Rob Duder. It would be, they would get their own sort of cameo chapter. And of course, I'm going to dial them in to be flamboyant and over the top. And maybe they're a triad mob boss, or maybe they're, the rock singer at the casino, or maybe they're, one of the love interests of one of the characters. Depends on, what names I get and what I want to do with that. But yeah, that's my uppermost tier. And then I have a stretch goal as well that we will do a special limited edition hardcover release with variant cover art if we can reach another $500 above my asking goal. I already have kind of an idea as to sort of the variant cover art I want to do, and this one would not be available sort of on Amazon. This would just be like a private release that would be signed and personalized, sent out to everyone who backs me. And of course, the backers all get their names put in the acknowledgement section as well, so you can have your name listed in the book there. As for the future, yes, I actually very feverishly wrote a novelette called Taming the Laser Leopard, which is a prequel that goes back to actually specifically deal with the wedding of Olive Yang. They were married to a man that was set up as an arrangement. They only had an interest in women. The marriage did not last long. All this is in the historical record. And of course, I'm taking this over-the-top, flamboyant character with a laser sword arm who smuggles their own girlfriend into their wedding and writing a nice, drunken tale of woe on that. And of course, it's told through the point of view of one of the minor characters named Tech Mescal, who is a sort of pirate smuggler figure who just happens to stumble into the wedding. In fact, the wedding episode is referenced in Tiger Blues. So that's all in there as well. And that will be coming. It's still only his first draft, and I know it's very rough. I've recorded a few chapters of which I'm going to release on the podcast as promotion for this. And then to get the full thing, you're going to have to wait another maybe 4 to 6 months. And I hope to have it released by the end of the year. But that's prequel in terms of the future of the series. I do want to move forward with these characters and do more novel length stuff. As I mentioned, you can get book 2. There's definitely a book that will pick up a few years later and deal with some CIA scheming and, Great Leap Forward, Chinese communist shenanigans going on there. And their own personal dramas come into this as well. So I hope to start writing on that one. I've got, 2 chapters kind of partially written, but I hope to kind of begin blasting out more of that one once I'm done with this campaign.
Wow, well, that all sounds really exciting. Can't wait. Looking forward to read so much more in this universe, so much more from you, Jason, period. So you're a must-buy author. I plan to read everything you write. So as I mentioned, I can't wait to dive into Harujan 2, which I have on my shelf, obviously, and can't wait to get to that. And and again, Tiger Blues was phenomenal. I would just like to give all of my guests, again, the opportunity to, if you wish, and no pressure, you don't have to, if there's anything you wish to promote, if there's anything you wish to say about, where to follow you in social media, and again, you may, no pressure, you don't have to if you don't want to for whatever reasons, or anything regarding something you want to talk about, just give you that opportunity to do that, especially as creatives. Because we, as you know, creators, we do a lot in these spaces. So, Rob, anything you'd like to mention?
To hawk, to push my wares.
Yes, yes.
You can find me on social media under RW Duder. I'm the only Duder around, so other than the Big Lebowski, maybe. And I appreciate this. Had a great time, and check out my stuff. Check out Jason's stuff. Check out PL's stuff. Check out all the stuff.
Thanks so much, Rob. Tia?
Well, I don't have really anything to sell. I mostly just do support work, and I work with the Pride Committee in my city and things. So all I can say is it's June when we're recording, but here we are. Happy Pride to everyone watching, and happy Pride to all of you. And if you are yourself trapped in the closet, well, reach out, because people like myself exist, and we want to help you feel free and join us in changing this world so that we all can live together peacefully and freely and stop this ridiculousness. So happy Pride, and thank you, all of you, for having me just here to talk. It's very great to get to speak to people who understand and read the same kinds of things I do. It's great. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it was an honor to have you, Tia. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And Jason, please feel free to plug your social media or where to buy your books or anything else you'd like to mention.
Yeah, so almost all my social media is at Horigens Hounds, which is maybe a little bit difficult to spell, but you can go to my website, jasonmshannon.com. The Kickstarter link is the main page, and all my socials are at the bottom there. And all this month, I am just promoting the hell out of this. So please visit the Kickstarter. You can check out all the rewards there. I have a nice little video introing everything. I have a podcast where all this month, again, I'm promoting the book. So T and I have done some history deep dives on both of these characters. The first 2 chapters are available. We didn't really mention it in the stream, but both Olive and Yoshiko had novels written about them in their own lifetime, which contributes to their sort of over-the-top alter ego. And I'm going to do a little bit of reading from both of those and talk about the historical context in that. And then you're going to get at least the intro to Taming the Laser Leopard at the end of the month as well on that. So yeah, everyone should go check out my podcast. That's just all absolutely free. It costs you nothing to check that out. And then you can go and check out the Kickstarter on top of that. And just PL, I wanted to mention, since you brought up the Hounds of Origin, I know I told you this in person, but the themes at the end of the Hounds of Origin, or I'm kind of tackling throughout there, are similar to the themes here in Tiger Blues. And I'm curious to see how people deal with both of those, how people think. Hounds of Origin is obviously much darker in tone, and it's much more expansive and many more characters, and there's sort of looming threats of the future and whatnot. Whereas this is much more, leaning slightly into camp and more humorous in the dialogue. But overall, the themes, at least there's certain themes that are kind of playing into each other there. So if anyone's read the Hounds of Origin, please check this out. I love to hear back from readers, see if you preferred one over the other, or if you thought they both complement each other, or if I'm just repeating myself. But you can let me know. I always like to hear from people. And yeah, thank you again so much for having me on. This was a blast. I'm glad that all 3 of you could be here. Everyone, thank you so much for reading the book, and I hope that more people can check it out soon.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, for being awesome, for writing such an awesome book. I cannot wait to, again, dive into the second part of Hounds of Origin. Quickly for me, PL Stewart, the social media stuff, most of it's at PL Stewart Writes. The John King Saga, the main series, 5 books out, 6th one coming out in the spring of 2026, which will be entitled Black Dragon on Red. I've been honored to have been on Jason's podcast. He's such a fabulous human being to feature me on 2 of them. Talk about the first book of John King, the second book, The Last Atlantean. So that's a huge honor for me. So, but Jason has some amazing content on his podcast, much more interesting than hearing about me. So check out his podcast, some fabulous stuff. I can't wait to check out the one where you and Tia are delving into the 2 main characters and the historical context. So that I'm really stoked with that. I gotta check that out as soon as I can. So come to my channel for 6 Elemental interviews. I have features with Jason, for example, great creators in the community, and hope to have more in the future. So that's also on my channel, and as well, I'm part of the Page 2 umbrella. My wonderful partner Taylor from Eighth Pieces of Pages, where we do the Page Chewing main interview series. So once again, this was the launch party for Jason Shannon's Tiger Blues. Amazing book, amazing author. Thank you so much to our guests, Rob Duder, who I have his book, Have to Get a Great Author in his own right, and Tina Votary. So much, and thanks so much, Tina, for all your insights and all the information you provided. And really, I felt I've learned a lot from you as well during this broadcast. So everyone who joined, watched the live, anyone who watches the replay, thank you so much. You're what makes this type of long form content awesome. So thank you so much. Yeah, big hearts and love to everybody out there. So thanks so much again for the incredible Jason Shannon and guests. And go back to Kickstarter, Tiger Blues, awesome books. And I predict it's going to, Jason never ceases to amaze. I predict this is going to figure in my top indie books of the year by year end. I have no doubt. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And